evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. WeatherBrains episode number 825, the pre-show, the magical time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. And the gang's all here, so somebody say outrageous. Go.
Outrageous things.
Somebody's got to have a boring personal story here, a humorous anecdote. I mean, somebody should go. I mean, go.
I mean, if you would like something extremely boring, but probably a salient point before the show begins, I am not really sure that I've gotten what could be called sleep over the last 2 nights. So my comments tonight, just you let me know if I'm veering.
We thought you were going to be in Australia, Kim. You're actually here, but you had to participate in the middle of the night over there.
Sorry, what was that?
You're here. You didn't teleport back, I don't think. So you weren't in Australia, but you were participating remotely?
I was participating remotely, and they were so cute because they were talking about how it was their tea time. And Julie and I were like, it's not our tea time. It's some other time for us here.
Good, Travis. Now we're good and golden. Now we got Travis.
Yay.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good. Was it you guys that we screwed up on last time, right? Yes. One not there. All right. I apologize.
That's okay.
Show title.
That show had a backup something going on. What was it? It worked out okay. I forget what we were doing, but this will be even more fun to have you on tonight.
Well, I do apologize for that mix-up.
Don't worry.
For the pre-show and for the regular pre-show viewers, Mr. Murray had us open the thing 30 minutes early tonight, and they've been gossiping or something here. I was trying to eat a peanut butter sandwich here, but I didn't want to hear all the gossip. So what were you guys talking about for 30 minutes? I mean, is this a secret meeting?
We were talking about a 2013 tornado in El Reno. That was a big part of it.
2011.
Well, goodness, that should be on the pre-show.
Well, we were supposed to kind of talk about, this show, the next show, but it's just we're just gonna do what we do, James. We don't need any pre-production value added to the show.
No, if you like an organized show, you will not like this one.
Boy, the books
this
have
is awesome. Well, we have a show title in the chat session already.
Which
I just had to mute because my cat barfed next to me. This has been my day. From Dr. Jacobs. That's great. If only we were recording right now.
Like that one. Yeah.
Now I'm worried about someone running through it and tracking it across the
Whoa! Oh!
Oh my God.
That's a scene ripped from our morning here when my baby, who was up well before the sun rose, I took her into the playroom where the cat left that gift for us to walk through. So I feel every bit of that.
I like that new Heisman House commercial they run during the ESPN games with all the Heisman winners, and they say they have a cat problem.
Yep.
They're hawking up these big, colorful hairballs in the Heisman House.
So we're waiting on the TV here at the top of the hour. So we've got 1 minute and 15 seconds, and we'll get this thing cranking here. So nobody said anything outrageous yet here on the pre-show. I thought with everybody here on the pre-show, somebody would say something totally outrageous.
Too tired, James.
I'm just going to keep shut up. So
I guess it's up to me or Troy. The two of us, between the two of us, we'll say something outrageous before this show is over. We will infuriate somebody.
And bring up some chemtrails or something. Every time I get a shot of one, I tweet it at you now, James.
Yeah, it's like James said, though. We could say nothing for the next hour and a half, and people would get upset with us. So
exactly.
I got a response from Amtrak. My tweet to you Friday night about my dinner in the sleeper car.
Well, what did they say?
They said that they were glad that Amtrak was one of my happy places.
Okay. All right, we got 15 seconds and we'll get this thing started. Look at the chemtrails one more.
Chemtrails.
I just like playing that. All right. Welcome to our friends watching on television. Let's get this show started. We'll hit record track 1 and record track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. That's the real Bill Curtis. I mean, some people don't believe that that's the real Bill Curtis.
It is.
But he was actually a guest on this show, thanks to Jen. I mean, so.
That's right.
Anyway, welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 825, the weekly show all about weather. This is the world's longest running weather podcast, 15 and a half
the
years.
world's longest podcast too, James.
I was going to say,
Comments.
not again tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, we started back in 06. So soon we'll be 16 years old in January. So there you go.
We can actually
All right, we got to
see show
reaching
1000, James. Yeah, I mean, we can see it. It's maybe 3 years out, but we can see it.
825. We're getting close here. So we got a full house. Going to be a fun show tonight. Kim, are you in Australia or where are you?
I just
Misconception number one.
As much as anyone can be anywhere anymore, like really be in a place that in a way that matters. Yeah, I was just in Australia. I gave a talk for the Bureau of Meteorology, their research and development conference, which was really, really cute because I've had a full work day here and we're well into, the evening, and there they were talking about, have a break and have your tea time. And it was pretty cute. And it's tomorrow there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've already had your Tuesday morning over in Australia. Yeah.
I have gotten to sample Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning was pretty bright and chipper and Australian.
She's from the future. Wow, that's awesome. Well, we want to hear more about these Australian adventures here in a minute. Jen Nairmore is on the show. Jen, you were one of the first ones here. You've been here 30 minutes. I mean, you still awake? Everything okay?
I am. I think it's still Monday morning for me, though. I am. Boy, this is a long day. But no, it's good to see everybody. I love it. And I'm excited about the show and talking to Travis tonight. So it's great to see everybody.
And Dr. Jacobs already had a catastrophe here, so the show was starting. Would you like to explain yourself? Yes, catastrophe.
My cat is like a binge eater, and I didn't really feed him all day today, so I put some food out there, and he just ate the whole bowl and then proceeded to throw up right next to my foot on the floor.
Sounds like me.
And now my biggest concern is that my kids are going to run through it on the way to the kitchen or something. So
same thing here. Jeez.
Wow. Well, if it happens, please get some video. Troy, have you thrown up on the floor today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. I got my goldfish and iced tea with me tonight. I am happy. I'm excited. Hope everyone else is doing good out there.
Okay. Well, Rick Smith, you came back. I mean, it's like I was afraid that Rick he would be back for his homecoming week. He was back for 1 week. He decided, I've had enough of these jabronis. I'm out of here. But you came back, so thank you.
2 in a row. I mean, one at a time here. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you let me back in. So.
We're honored that you're back in. So,
We
Bill
are.
Murray, it's always an honor to have you here because you are the guest booking officer, and you, sir, are going to take control of the show. Go.
Oh, well, that and $4 to get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Tonight's guest WeatherBrain is one of the executive producers on the very neat film 13 Minutes. Also an avid storm chaser and man about town. Travis Farncombe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. That's the first time I've been introduced as man about town, but I like that title. So
I'd say it fits. So where are you coming to
that.
us tonight from, Travis?
I'm in Toronto. So I am a Canuck on the panel tonight.
There you go. All right. That's awesome. Are you a big hockey fan?
That's right. No
hockey fan.
No, not one of those Canadians. But, I'm up here and have been for 2 years straight. So I'm ready for the world to get back to normal and to hit the planes again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. So tell us about you first, Travis. You are a man about town, and tell us all about your younger days and what put you here where you are now.
Sure. I mean, I'm based out of Toronto. I've educated in Boston for architecture, and I do nothing with that degree. Live up here with my family, and what I try to do is just make sure that anything that I'm working on is infused with some of that passion. And in this case, with 13 minutes, it's the weather component. I've been storm chasing for I guess about 12 years now, and have made my way across the plains and the prairies and seen some amazing stuff. So it's just, I think for those weather lovers out there, everyone knows it's just kind of in your blood if it's in your blood, and with me it is. So yeah, that's me.
Well, most of our weather brains have some interesting story or incident in their younger days that sort of steered them toward the weather. What was that for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I was 12 years old, and it was one of Ontario's strongest and most significant derecho events in recent memory. It was in 1995, and one of the tornadoes that was spawned during the derecho actually touched down at the lake that my cottage was at, destroying a trailer park across the way and then a couple cottages up the road from me. Happened in the middle of the night, but so there was nothing to see. It was felt, and so I don't know, something about the power that night just captured me. And the next year out came Twister, and it's kind of the story writes itself from there. So that was my big one, the Great Lakes derecho of '95.
Yeah, so right behind that was Helen Hunt and the movie Twister, huh? So tell us how that affected you.
That's right. I mean, it affected my mom more than me. She had to take me to the theater like 12 times, but it's I was just a kid obsessed with tornadoes and storm chasing. I think when I was a little guy, like I was Googling pictures of tornadoes, and every science project was about tornadoes. And everyone used to kind of tease me like, "Hey, tornado boy," but now everyone kind of wants to go out storm chasing. So it's just become kind of a way of life for me. I take it really seriously, and I practice storm chasing incredibly safely. I have tremendous respect for the weather. So yeah, I mean, Twister, to go back to your question, just like it's the storm chasers movie, it's the tornado movie, and it's I can sit down and watch it any night of the week. So it's had a long life for me.
I had a very failed attempt, because I think I've only ever seen it once, on one of the other great podcasts when I was on, and they did a Twister trivia, and I got exactly one answer right out of the entire trivia. It was very shocking and very embarrassing. So I need to go back and watch some of those too. But I did go through the Twister experience at at Universal Studios enough times to make up for it, but it didn't help in the trivia department. So
you mentioned that's the same way, Bill, with me. I mean, I don't think I've seen Twister. The only time I did was really with a quarter bottle of vodka. That I mean, it's like, I think it's sort of in a way like right here. But it's sort of like, I think police officers watching cop movies or cop shows in a way. I think I probably would enjoy it if I just wasn't in the business so much, I guess. But I understand what you're saying, Travis. I mean, it sounds,
Well, how many kids do you think that movie started on the way to a career in meteorology? I mean, you hear so many of them. Kim, did it have any influence on you, or was it where did it come in your career?
It came, I was in middle school when it came out, and my mom, but I was already weather obsessed, and part of that was inherited. My mom was weather obsessed. She'd seen the Palm Sunday outbreak in northern Indiana, the Twin F4s that went through South Bend to Elkhart. Yep. And so I grew up with this person who was a medical professional, but actually if meteorology had been an option for her, then that's what she would have done. So we were front row for Twister when it came out. and it was really exciting. But much as it maybe just gave me a marginal boost, there's been studies that have demonstrated, especially for the University of Oklahoma, that had an appreciable effect on their undergraduate enrollment after Twister. It's the Twister bump, certainly.
Okay, James. Now I'm going to remember from here on out that Kim was in middle school when that came out, and James can I go to sleep now?
Troy and I had been doing the weather for 30 years when Twister came out, so you know.
Okay, guys, I was interviewing a student who was possibly going to join my team as a grad student, and she was from Mississippi, and talked about how the April 27th, 2011 outbreak was formative for her, and getting her inspired in meteorology. And I mentioned that was something I'd studied for my dissertation, and that's where I met many of you. And she told me that she was in elementary school or something when that happened. Wow. And I died. So I get your feelings. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, tomorrow when you get the newsletter, there's a little Easter egg in there for you, thanks to Rick Smith. And I won't say anything else, but look for it. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, make sure you go to the website and do that, because there's a fun Easter egg right in the middle of it for you tomorrow. And I know you're gonna love it. And all I'll say is that there's probably trading cards involved in the process. So anyway, that's all I'll say. But I loved seeing a story, Kim, in that vein about Bob Costas on CBS Sunday Morning yesterday. He carried around a Mickey Mantle baseball card with him like all of his life. And he keeps it in his pocket. And I thought that was a pretty cool story for somebody who loved baseball. And I didn't get to congratulate my Braves because, I really didn't have high hopes last Monday night, but they somehow did it. And got the World Series, got our second title in Atlanta. So that's good. But Travis, you mentioned chasing responsibly. Talk about how you went about doing that, because that's real important. Because a lot of people we talk to chasers on here sometimes, just go do it. So there's a big difference between the way you did it and the way, some people do.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody who asks me, like, how do you get into storm chasing? I always tell them, go out with somebody experienced and who you trust, first and foremost. I was fortunate. I was able to go with a storm chase tour company for the first time. And for the first several years of my chase career, I simply went out on storm chase tours. Now, not everyone has that option, but I think that if you really want to get out there and try storm chasing, you got to find somebody who knows the ropes and knows their stuff. And so that was kind of my route into storm chasing. And then I ended up guiding with Silver Lining Tours for several years, and then moved on from that and just chase on my own. And for me, chasing safely means keeping everything in mind. You're considering what's happening on your computer screen, on the radar. You're looking at the window and evaluating the storm in real time, making sure you have situational awareness. One of my biggest things is if I'm down in the States, storm chaser traffic convergence, I consider it as, just as a significant element of the storm as any of the storm elements themselves. So for me, I kind of am taking that all into account. I never like to be in a moment where I don't have a safety route in mind, and a plan to get out of the way. If I find myself in a moment where I'm like, oh, I got to go, where am I going? I've done something wrong, and it's just not a place I like to be in. So that's kind of my take on it.
So would you recommend one of those storm chasing tours to people who want to give it a try?
I would. Yeah, for sure. If it's an option, I think that it gets you out there in a controlled, group and environment, and it's the way to go. I mean, the worst thing you can do is go out after these storms when you don't know storms and you don't know what you're doing out there. It can, everyone on here knows it can be deadly and it can be serious. So just finding the way to get out there in, with folks who really can take you out there safely. That's everything.
I was lucky because I went with Gene Roden, someone I haven't heard from in a long time, but Gene's a great storm chaser. And I had won the XM radio radar. I never win anything. And I actually won it at the Chaser Con in like 2004, I guess. Tim Samaras is the person who handed it to me. It still makes me tear up a little bit, because that event is great. It's coming up in January. If you haven't, if you're interested in chasing at all, I would highly recommend that you try to see if you can get a chance to go out there to that event, because I did that for 2 years and then just screwed up my courage enough to ask Gene Roden if he would take me out with him. Of course, he was glad to, because I had this new piece of equipment that nobody else had, this radar that, came off of the XM, which was important back then, because, I can't tell you how many times I saw hotel general managers and owners slam down the internet when we were pulled up in their parking lot, in North Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas, because you're just trying to steal a little Wi-Fi. But, Gene, really, it was the consummate professional, like so many great storm chasers are. And, he put us right in the perfect position on both days. And on the second day, we saw 11 tornadoes, within about an hour, 45 minutes.
That's a good storm chase day.
It was like going to the Super Bowl. It's like first day, you go to a high school game, and then the second day you're at the Super Bowl. So it was quite a lot of fun. But talk about some of your biggest chases in the States, and then I want you to talk about Canadian chasing. How's it different?
Yeah, you bet. So down in the States, I've been on some pretty prolific events. I've been at Joplin in 2011, and we were out in front of that tornado. We didn't actually encounter the damage because we were, doing our best to stay ahead of that storm. It was such a fast, violent, evolving tornado. By the time we were out of its way, we were well out of the city, and then it's time for first responders to get in and do their thing. But that event for me changed my perspective on chasing right out the gate. It sobers you, and it makes you realize that you're going to see these things that do that kind of destruction. And I mean, I don't think you're a human being if it doesn't make you kind of like stop and check yourself and give your head a shake. So Joplin is one that obviously stands out. Pilger, Nebraska, I storm chased as well in 2014 out in front of the twin tornadoes. That event, another unfortunately deadly event, but from a storm chasing perspective, the tornadoes were exceptional and obviously extremely rare event with these two violent tornadoes running side by side like that. So that was an amazing one in the States. And then, I mean, I've been all across the States. A few on this panel will have to forgive me. I don't enjoy the Southeast. I like to chase where I can see where it's flat and easy. And that's kind of the difference that you were asking about up here in Canada. I chase in Southern Ontario, which is probably a lot like the Southeast US, with a lot of hills, a lot of trees, some questionable road networks, a lot of QLCS tornado events, which are real needle in a haystack for a chaser to get lucky on them. But this summer I was lucky enough to get out to the prairies a bit, and had just an amazing couple storm chases out in Saskatchewan, where you're out on these beautiful rolling hills and the prairies. There's, maybe one other storm chaser out there type thing. It's kind of like you're out there and you're free and it's all to yourself. And it's endless amounts of prairie for these storms to track over without impacting people, which is, obviously what you want to see. So I got a couple beautiful tornadoes in Saskatchewan this summer. And it's, I'll go where the storms are, but as of late, I will tell you, I prefer to get to down there for the high plains season, a little later in the year when things are a little less nuts.
A little bit less nuts is an admirable goal for chasing. High plains season will get you there. I couldn't help but remark. We were chatting a little bit in the chat sidebar when you mentioned the Southeast and not liking to chase there. There's a program called Vortex Southeast. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And the researchers who are given essentially funding to try to observe storms in the Southeast, they don't like chasing there much either. It is a very difficult thing, and they tend to have to do mitigation techniques like being in situ and just hoping that storms roll over them. It is a very, very difficult thing to do. So certainly also my philosophy, but along the lines of geography, I am so curious about chasing in Canada. I love chasing in the United States, and especially in the the Central Plains, the Intermountain West. And part of what I really love about it is that you get to encounter so much of the history of the development of a place like that. When you're out there, when you're chasing in Canada, I just imagine it's an even more sparse population. And so what are your favorite preoccupations when you chase in a place like that? Are you experiencing some of the culture that is out there? What kinds of cultures do exist for you to encounter? What what kinds of fun things do you do to pass the many, many hours that go on between leaving for an event and seeing something happen?
And where can you get a burrito in Saskatoon? That's what I want to know, Travis.
That's a good question. That one I'm not going to be able to help you out with, but I can tell you that, like, for me, first and foremost, it's the landscape out, anywhere that I'm at. I don't like to go and sit in the parking lot at a gas station while I'm kind of like waiting for the event to get underway. I like to go and find a rural road out in the middle of nowhere and just take in the best vista I can find and enjoy the sky. Like, that's one of the beauties of storm chasing for me. It's that, we so rarely get to go and just put everything else aside and just be in nature. And it's an opportunity to do that. So, I mean, first and foremost, it's that. But then, on down days, on, the morning before you get out there and stuff, I love culture. I love getting into, the warehouse district in Omaha and Bricktown in Oklahoma City, and going and seeing the bridges in Saskatoon. It's kind of like just getting out there and walking around, eating the food, talking to the people, enjoying the place. Like, it's a pretty cool hobby when you find yourself literally all over North America. With an opportunity to see so much. So it's great.
Yeah. And, Bill actually asked some questions in the sidebar chat here that I was thinking of too. When you're out there, especially in the plains of Canada, what is the road network like? I know that can become an issue in some places in the high plains, especially if you want to chase in Nebraska anywhere north of I-80. That's a pretty exciting place to be. But I imagine that Canada can be something similar. And what's data availability like for you there as well? We, again, can be a really interesting thing to contend with when you get into the Dakotas, Montana. Can only imagine the same thing is true in Canada.
Absolutely. I will say the road networks in Saskatchewan are actually pretty good. They're wide, and there are a lot of dirt roads. And to be honest with you, a lot of it comes down to the weather, because if it's been raining or storming, I'm not a guy who will take a chance on a muddy dirt road with storms coming. So I like to stick to the pavement, but the road networks aren't too bad in Saskatchewan, Manitoba. They're quite good as well. And then I've not really encountered too many problems with data, to be honest with you. Definitely have down in the States. But across Saskatchewan and Alberta this summer, you're kind of bopping around in between the major centers. And if you're with, Rogers or Verizon or whatever, it wasn't too bad.
Well, that's good news, especially because something that I understand of the geography of the northern plains is it can be really, really flat when you're chasing, are you ever concerned about the sort of dual hazards, dual threats of tornadoes and flash flooding? That flash flooding can be a real challenge, especially if you get a maybe earlier season kind of event in, I know, the northern plains. Can you describe what that's like for you to navigate? You mentioned trying to stay away from muddy roads. And my sense of it is that in Canada, if you're doing chasing there, you especially want to be sure to be mindful of that. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I would add to your list of like the flash flood concerns, anywhere where there have been fires recently, which there have been a lot of lately. So I think just getting a sense of the geography, getting a sense of the road networks, and getting a sense of any kind of ongoing kind of regional issues like that, where, you know, if flash flooding has been ongoing, if flooding has been ongoing, if there are road closures, I would say all of that is something that certainly you've got to take into account.
Hey, Travis, I want to talk about your website because it is very slick. It's been a little while since I've been on there. And so I was looking at it, and amazing stuff from different chasers. So I want to talk about what, you know, how did you compile all that? But I do want to mention Bryce Kintai, because I went on one chase ever in my life. I have never seen a tornado. And Kim is trying to get me to Oklahoma at some point here to get me to go chasing. But anyway, Bryce took me on my only chase. And so when you talk about going with somebody who knows what they're doing, I was with the Forever Chasing crew several years ago. We went just west of Wichita. And I was so excited. And we saw big hail. And I was told if we saw a tornado, I owed the steak dinner. And I was willing to pay whatever. I just wanted to see something from far, far away. But Bryce is great. So it's neat to see chase stories from different chasers. So talk about your website and how that all came together. And just what is your goal there with the chasers? It really seems neat that they're sharing their story, their love for weather and chasing.
For sure. So I, first and foremost, I will agree with you. Bryce is a great guy and a great chaser. So with Highways and Hailstones, what we did was we decided that, you know, it would be cool to put together a place where chasers can exhibit their kind of storm chase careers, so that the like 10-year-old storm geeks out there can go on and just dive in and become immersed in severe weather experiences. And our motivation was to put it together with a group of chasers who are experienced and who chase responsibly and can share stories of their adventures. What we wanted to do is make it a place where, you know, if I chased one day and Kim, you chased that same day and you were wildly successful and I was wildly not successful, you know, we can share notes and check out each other's chase logs and figure out what's gone on. So really, it's just a kind of a forum and an opportunity for the chase community to come together in that way. And then I would add, we've created an app in the last year that's complementary to it. And the app helps to all kind of in one consolidated place document all of your activities while you're chasing. So if you're using the Highways and Hailstones app, it will map your entire storm chase route, geolocate all of your photos and videos and tweets and everything that kind of happens along the way. And then at the end of it, you hit publish and boom, it shows up as kind of a chase log on your page, and it's done all the work for you. And we're incorporating other features to make it more interactive and also help chasers be able to chase and report kind of more efficiently. So that's the goal with Highways and Hailstones.
That's awesome. And didn't you have some history? I mean, essentially this is history. I mean, you're talking about people's chase stories, but didn't you have some history stories on there as well at one point? Or am I?
Yeah, we've got a map on there as well. And what we're doing is documenting all tornadoes across, it started out with all tornadoes in Ontario actually years ago. And it's evolved where we're building out a map of tornadoes across North America. Because there's a lot of, like, you can find a lot of info on US tornadoes. If you go and dig around, you can find a lot of info on Canadian tornadoes, but we don't really look at the big picture on either side of the border and kind of in one place. So that's what we're doing with that as well.
Okay, that's great, because I know I've used you as a source before, but we like to at Tornado Talk like to explore more Canadian tornadoes. We've only done we did the Edmonton event, the big one, 87, I think it was.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at dates as my crew is, but it's great stuff. And so folks, you need to check it out. The imagery on this website is awesome. So I mean, it's captivating, and I love it because it's storytelling. It's not drama. It's a real life story. It's like they're trying to take you on the chase with them, and that's really cool. So thanks for putting that together.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I found that those storm chasing stories, those accounts, especially back in the early 2000s, Storm Track. I know y'all had Tim Marshall on last week, and I'm sure Storm Track came up somewhere in the conversation along the way, because all those incredible stories prepared me so much, and I just read them over and over and over, because there was so much knowledge in those things. So that's really cool that you're automating that process, Travis. So talk about the Canadian Weather Service, and this will get Troy and Rick and Neil all excited. Compare and contrast their weather service with the U.S. National Weather Service.
Oh, so I got to be careful not to get myself in trouble here.
we're not picked up over the border, so you're safe here.
All right, wonderful. No, we I think Environment Canada does our watches and warnings here in north of the border. I think that this summer there's been a real focus on not being trigger shy on watches, tornado watches, and on tornado warnings. There were a few events for one reason or another that were warned, a little late after the fact, and they were pretty big events here this summer. An EF2 tornado that went through, I think it was Mascouche, Quebec, and then another that went through Barrie, Ontario, and damaged hundreds of homes. So I think that there's a real conversation going on in Canada right now, just about streamlining our watches and warnings. And a part of that, we've got the Northern Tornadoes Project, a team of researchers up here now based out of the University of Western Ontario. And what that team is doing is trying to get an accurate hold on Canada's tornado climatology. And I think what's really amazing is, in the years that they've been operational and have been detecting exponentially more tornadoes than were being found before they started looking for them in more remote regions. I think Environment Canada has gotten a lot kind of sharper with warnings, especially across kind of northern and more remote regions. Compare and contrast. Yeah, I think that the States is more of a kind of consolidated machine, but I think that Canada is really catching up in terms of how we forecast, watch, warn, talk about severe weather.
Is weather radio an important tool north of the border?
No. People don't. My personal opinion is that people north of the border don't respond to tornado warnings the way that people down south do. Down south, if a tornado warning is issued, people are like putting the kids in the bathtub and coming out with a mattress and sticking it on top. That's not happening in Toronto when a tornado warning is issued. So I think that there's this conversation around like when a warning is issued, sometimes you have 13 minutes, sometimes you have 20 minutes, sometimes you have 2 minutes. So it's like, how do you respond with the time that you have, and respond well? So that's kind of what it's all about.
Many of us grew up idolizing the Weather Channel, and and for a long time, that and weather radio was all we had. But talk about the Canadian equivalent of the Weather Channel. How important is it, and does it achieve the same fan status that a lot of the personalities do on our Weather Channel?
Yeah, in Canada we have the Weather Network, and I would say it's kind of celebrity making material. It's watched from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Everybody knows the talents and on-air personalities on it, and everybody watches the Weather Network. It is like that with the Weather Channel down in the States, where it's like it is the star making weather network. So that's what we got up here. It's truly not too much different.
That's pretty cool, because you can't see TWC north of the border, can you, on most systems? Is that true or not true?
When I was growing up, we had stolen satellites, so I got it, and I geeked out on the Weather Channel all the time. Well, yeah, but no, it's not readily available on Canada up here.
So what made you get into filmmaking, Travis? What was the leap there?
Yeah, I had executive produced a film previously, and that film, did quite well critically. It was called Introductor, and I got to know the filmmakers very well. And after that, said to them, "All right, listen, we got to make a tornado movie." So really, it truly is like just this fusion of passions. I also think that with film, it's a pretty cool opportunity to participate in some cultural impact in a way that might not happen otherwise. So what we wanted to do was put together a film where a lot of tornado films are a lot of fun, but not a lot of them are real. And so we took the approach to say, okay, we want to make this real, and we want to make it matter. So we don't even have storm chasers in the film because there's enough of those.
Rick, you had a bone to pick with that, didn't you? No.
An hour later.
No, I thought it was awesome. I was shocked there wasn't storm chasing not even a shot of a TV chaser or anything. So I thought it was cool.
Thank you. Yeah, Rick, I actually we thought about adding a storm chaser logo to one of the damaged cars, actually, and that was a conversation about whether that would be our only storm chaser reference, simply as a kind of reminder to chasers out there. But no, the bottom line is, if you're making a disaster film and you don't focus at all on the people who are impacted by disasters, it doesn't make much sense. So what we did was we said, okay, we're going to ground this in a community. We're going to make it about people, and we are going to talk about what this day really looks like. We're not going to exaggerate. We're not going to glorify. We're not going to overdo it or get heavy-handed. We're just going to lean into the kind of realism of an event like this.
So that actually makes me think of a question that I had. I've often wondered when I see a lot of these films that when you're looking through the credits, they have scientific advisors and all that. And I would consider you to probably be one of the scientific advisors in this film. What is it like when you're putting this film together from your expertise and background in chasing, when you're dealing with a lot of people that want to hype and sensationalize this? And how do you sort of tone them down?
That's a great question. I found myself a lot of time reminding people that we only had so much budget, but more so that was for a reason. It's because, we're not putting 8 tornadoes impacting this town one after another, and the tornado can't last an hour. Why? Because it's not a really fast hurricane. It's a tornado. These things have an approach, and that's how it goes. So we also kind of just kept saying to the cast and crew all the way along, this is about realism. This is about weather accuracy. And so all the way through, we even went so far as to, I remember one day where we had these giant wind machines and they were blowing the wrong direction, and we had Kim looking at the supercell standing in what would have been outflow. And I was like, we can't put this film out with her watching a supercell approach standing in an outflow dominant storm. So we flipped all of the fans around and then went.
You go, Kim.
Sure. So I want to take off from Neil's question. I think that he was right on saying that you would serve as sort of a science advisor for a film like this. As a social scientist who studies how people perceive risk in these things, choose to respond to them, I was really moved by your decision to focus on the human story. And so I'm curious, when you were putting this together, how did you gather information about that? Do you feel that there's been other efforts you've undertaken where you've maybe learned more about the human element that you also brought into the story? Because we understand that you are a philanthropist and have been involved in a number of different research projects that touch on a variety of areas. So I was really curious to learn more about that part of what you brought into the movie.
Yeah, the movie. So what we wanted to do was really look at that intersection of meteorological science and social science. And that really is at the core of 13 minutes, because, we're pretty good with our watches and warnings these days, but at the end of a long line sequence of events are people. And it's human nature, and it's our behavior and our circumstances that determine how our moment of survival will go. So what we did was we looked at different kind of issues that and this was through research and conversations down at NWS in Norman and a couple other places about, what are some of the big issues that come up that cause problems for people and communities when a warning's going off. And we looked at everything from people who ignore warnings, people who don't believe the warnings, people who have language issues, hearing impaired character. And we just tried to cross the spectrum of all of those circumstances that could make it more challenging to get yourself to a place of safety or respond in the optimal way. And then what we did was we created our characters to each kind of embody those same social media issues in their characters and in their own kind of stories and arcs. And we wove them together and brought all of our characters to a place where they were faced with a moment of survival, and they either had to behave, they either made good choices or landed in unfortunate circumstances or good circumstances or bad choices. And we really wanted to show the gamut. And, my hope is that people will see 13 minutes and come out of it and remember, if they're driving and they get a tornado warning, they'll remember what happened to everyone under the overpass at 13 minutes and Carlos not supposed to be there. And they'll remember some of that messaging about what to do and what not to do in a severe weather event.
Yeah, Travis, I really enjoyed the movie. I just finished watching it this afternoon, and I probably had several questions for you, but kind of following up on what you just perfectly led into, I was really impressed how you worked the education into the film. It was kind of subtle in a lot of ways. I mean, I thought it was interesting. At the beginning of the movie, it apparently was a high-risk tornado outbreak day, but you just see the people of the town just going about their business. They're living their lives. And all you hear is in the background, the radio, talking about tornadoes or severe weather outbreak or something like that. And that's probably pretty realistic in people's lives. People aren't tuned into the weather like we are obsessively. So I thought that was a cool touch. But what I wanted to talk about was the education part. I mean, you really seem to sneak in a lot of education. You just mentioned you hope people remember things, but you got in talks about between, the difference between a watch and a warning, the safety rules, wearing a helmet, getting in a bathtub. I don't know. There's lots and lots of things. So I'm assuming that was a very conscious effort to kind of weave that throughout the story.
Yeah, it was. We were very careful not to let the audience see any actions or behaviors and think they were the right ones to do themselves, if in fact they weren't. So it was important to me that all of the different actions that were taken and outcomes really did reflect kind of what can happen. And then in terms of the messaging, it's such a simple thing, but understanding the difference between a watch and a warning. People need to understand what a watch means. People need to understand what a warning means. They're both important, but they're very different messages. So, going through the film and scrubbing it for that kind of accuracy, I think it's like, how do you make a weather movie like this and not try to help people with their understanding of things, So that's really just the approach that we took.
And the cast is pretty amazing. They're people we've heard of and known. It's not like, you go to some film festivals and young filmmakers are making films, with just young actors. But I mean, Trace Adkins, Anne Heche, Paz Vega, these are people that, are established movie stars. Did most of them read the script and say, hey, I want to do this because I've got an interest in weather, severe weather, disasters, or is it just for them just another day at the office, making a movie?
I think that all of them were really drawn to the characters. There are it's a really diverse set of characters that we have, and there was a reason for that too. We wanted to basically say, we all are different. We all we live in diverse communities, and a tornado or a severe weather event can really kind of level the playing field for us, no matter what our beliefs are, who we are, any of it. And I think that all of the actors, I think it was more about being drawn to the actual arc of the character stories that they each played. Like, I can tell you, Anne Heche, who played Tammy, whose son comes out to her in the film. She obviously has kind of a personal connection to that storyline. So it was just important to her to play that part. Similarly, Trace Adkins, I think, really resonated to the role of Rick, who's, this kind of, patriot and kind of stoic farm guy. So I think that's more what landed us with it. But I would absolutely agree. Like, the cast, to me, they all just were so talented across the board and like filled the roles so perfectly.
I love when Trace Adkins says, "I know the difference between a tornado warning and a time-wasting tornado warning." I thought that was my part of the whole movie when he goes out to get on his ATV and work out on the farm. So I thought that
exactly. He was denial.
Yeah, you were working to represent the people of Central Oklahoma very, very, very determinedly. So I really did appreciate the way that you put people through all those circumstances. And I think of any disaster movie I've ever seen, this movie does the best job of demonstrating what it's like to go through a tornado, which is a really important part of helping people to know what it will take to make them safe when a tornado happens. I have, I think, a particular question. You sort of mentioned, some of the outcomes. You wanted to make sure that the outcomes were reflected the kinds of things people could really experience, especially if they made choices that, maybe were questionable choices or just, circumstantially difficult choices, but still outcomes that were realistic. Something that we do contend with in Central Oklahoma is the issue of people seeking shelter under overpasses. This was something you portrayed in the film. Without giving things away here, I'll just ask, how did you determine what those outcomes were going to look like for the people who had been under the overpass. I'll just tip my cards a little bit to say I was surprised perhaps that you gave those people as much help and good fortune as they got. What was behind that decision?
I will be perfectly honest with you because that's what I think I'm here to do. The folks in the underpass were supposed to be some of the most severely injured folks and coming out of the tornado. And we, without getting too much into it, that wasn't the way that we landed with the shot. So we actually focused a lot in post-production to try our best to illustrate the severity of those outcomes under the overpass. We added a body in one of the cars that's a VFX body that Carlos walks by. It's subtle, so it's kind of like you may or may not catch it, but it's there. And then as well as like some blood on the windows and a little bit more in the soundscape with some agonizing vocals. So I will just say I agree with you. I do. If I have one thing I'd go back and do over, I'd make those outcomes a little more severe.
Yeah, the overpass thing was interesting, and we could probably do a whole show on that. Maybe we should sometime about overpasses. But I just wanted to follow up on what Kim said, and I watched it this afternoon, and I got to say I've never been in a tornado, but I've interacted with a lot of people, and it seems to me that you have captured pretty closely. I mean, again, I haven't experienced it, but very dramatic, very realistic depiction of what it might be like to be in a tornado without being 10 minutes long like some disaster movies are where it never ends. I mean, it seemed very realistic as far as the length of time and the impacts, and it was kind of rough to watch, honestly, for me. I've really tried to stay away from tornado videos, a lot of news type stories since the May 2013 tornadoes. So this is probably the most realistic tornado video I've seen since then. And I had to kind of pause it every once in a while. It was kind of rough. I mean, the sequences with, and I don't have the characters' names, but the daughter and the babysitter in the house, they couldn't get to the shelter, so they just have to ride it out in the spot where they are. And then all the Carlos stuff, just you could just feel now again, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but you could just feel the experience. The hail was more realistic than anything Twister even came close to doing. We're not comparing this to Twister really, but I mean, the hail was very realistic. The hotel guests that where they were sheltering, I mean, everything was just super realistic, and it had a real impact on me. I mean, you really did a good job. The actors did a really good job selling their fear and their panic and everything. And I don't know, it was that whole sequence when the tornado hit, while it was hitting, and immediately after were super, super powerful for me. So good job with that.
Thank you. I'll tell you, Rick, that the hail was almost all done in the VFX process in post-production. It's all VFX hail, and it was one of the hardest things to get right. We had this amazing VFX team, Company 3, and the hail wasn't reading. You know, you go through iteration after iteration to get it right, and it was kind of like we were running out of time. And then on the last shot, they put this in front of us, and we were giving them visual references and talking about how we wanted it, you know, softball hail bouncing, you know, to certain heights and this sort of thing. And I agree. I think they nailed it in the end.
The hail was amazing. I'm so overwhelmed by that. But I wanted to, I don't know if I have a question or just wanted to share with you my thanks for bringing in the special needs with the hearing impaired, because that's just not a community that I think is reached enough in terms of how to go through a disaster, and how do we help those who are blind, who are hearing impaired or deaf, those who are in wheelchairs, and how do we help that community? And now I do have a quick question. The little girl, is she deaf?
She is, yeah.
Okay.
Shaylee Mansfield, she's deaf and actually nonverbal as well. And she's so talented. And in the film, I think everything from kind of her more quiet or emotional scenes right up until she's, in that house as it's being torn apart, she just threw herself into the role, and she's such a special talent.
Yeah, that character, I have a connection to the special needs community. And so that character for me was one of the most powerful to watch. And so thank you for bringing in that aspect to help that community, because I think we really need to ramp up our education there. So I really appreciate that. And as someone who has done a great deal of tornado history writing and then looking at the aftermath, the only critique I have for you here is that I wanted to see more at the end. Like, I'm ready for part 2, 13 minutes, part 2, the aftermath, but to see the community come together to rebuild. I was ready for that part. They went through all this stuff together, and then, how do they come together to rebuild the community after everything? So I was ready for that. So if you want to do the part 2, I'm ready for it.
I do think that's a movie.
Yeah, I do too. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I think you do an amazing job, Travis, talking or showing the gruesome nature of the injuries, which is always hard to see. But James has always spent a lot of time on this show talking about things that he wished he had never seen and really can't talk about. So I think you gave voice to that. James, talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've not had a chance to watch the film. I'm the only guy here that hasn't. So I promise I'll do that soon. But yeah, a lot of people think that tornadoes are always in another neighborhood, in another state. They happen to somebody else. The injuries aren't that bad. And the truth is, it's horrific, the nature of the injuries. And I saw things as a 17-year-old that the 17-year-old shouldn't really see, but maybe I had to see to kind of get me ready for what I do for a living. But it's a fine line, I guess, in a film, showing the nature of the injuries, while at the same time just not grossing people out. It's hard.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm fortunate. I've never come across injuries from a tornado myself. I hope that I never do. But I think that this film, I think we tried to show the seriousness with which you need to take an event like this. And part of that is showing the aftermath and these types of injuries. So we, in every way, that's really what we're trying to do with the film. We're trying to make people have a conversation about how they can respond, what they would do. We're trying to move the needle in a bunch of different ways. We actually made a very conscious decision that it was going to be this rain-wrapped tornado embedded in an HP supercell to help reinforce the idea that no, you don't always get to go stand on your porch for 20 minutes and watch it come slowly toward you. So everything all the way up to the character of the tornado was really, really considered. And James, I'll tell you, like you, in my opinion, I hope you don't mind me saying, you are a hero in the way that you communicate. And when you watch it, I'm sure you'll see a few Easter eggs that are, nods to you, because when we looked at, we looked all across the weather community, and we looked at all across videos to understand how we're communicating, and then really looked at the good and the bad. And I just want to say thank you to you, because I think the work that you do is life-saving and incredible. So
Oh, you're very kind. And again, I can't wait to see the film. We're getting into a time where I'll be able to watch that thing. We're going to get toward Thanksgiving. I'm going to have some time, and I can't wait to watch it. But I'm fascinated by filmmakers. I think it is an art. It is difficult. It is challenging. A lot of people think you could just throw together a film like this in a few weeks. Yeah, it's done. I don't think they understand the complicated nature of this, Travis. I mean, this is hard. Goodness gracious, it's expensive. It's hard. You got to monetize it. You got all these teams, the special effects teams, and the producers, the writers, the actors, the actresses. This ain't easy, is it?
It's not easy, and it takes a village, that's for sure. We had an amazing director on 13 Minutes, Lindsay Gosling, produced alongside also me and Karen Harnish, and then all the way across the crew, like you said, like all the way from the folks on set every day, our production designers, through to our Jen, I'm seeing your cat there.
Yeah. That cat makes an appearance every week on the show.
Sorry about that. She's
awesome. Don't apologize.
Yeah, she didn't know. Well, she was wondering where all the cats were in the movie, and so she's scary. So you answer.
Yeah. Where'd they go?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I mean, we had this incredible crew, and everyone knew why we were making the film. And I think that is knowing that you're working on something that's designed hopefully to make a difference, or at least participate in a conversation about making a difference. That's pretty motivational, I think, for a lot of people. And we landed with the most motivated group of people putting this film together you could ever imagine.
I love film festival films and know what trouble goes in that. This week is AFI, their film festival, virtually and in person in Los Angeles. I'm really excited. I'm taking off Thursday and Friday just so I can watch film after film all day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I know what great company you're moving in there, Travis, for sure. But James, you always talk about, the debris field that you encounter after a tornado, and you always warn your audience, to be prepared for that. There is nothing better to prepare you for having a pair of hard-soled shoes, boots, maybe an entire body armor suit or something, than what this movie shows you as the victims come out after the tornado. How in the world did you do that? What did you do?
Yeah, we had an amazing production designer, first and foremost. Him and his team brought in 80 dump trucks of rubble. And actually, a fun fact, it was the same company that provided the rubble for the movie Twister back in the day, that provided our rubble. We set up the sets we created these foreground, disaster scapes. And again, him and his team looked at visual references from Joplin, Tuscaloosa, Greensburg, more. And they really took it to heart to show damage in a realistic way. And then after that, in the VFX process, all of the damage was extended to the horizon lines with visual effects. And we also got about halfway through the VFX process, and we're like, something is missing here. And it was the debarked kind of skeletal trees. So we went through all of our shots with VFX, and we added those elements to kind of create depth of field and give it kind of that haunting, true essence.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. Something that we hear from survivors all the time is that people think about trying to survive the tornado itself, and they don't necessarily prepare adequately for what's going to happen afterwards. And your movie does a really nice job depicting that the tornado itself is just the start of a survival process. I loved that you put in a lot of obstacles that are extremely realistic things for people to think about navigating in the wake of the event. Something that I want to, I think, slightly return back to is the conversation we were just having about the different kinds of populations, especially vulnerable populations that can encounter these situations. You had a conversation, with Jen about the deaf populations, and a quick remark on that. There were captions featured in the movie that I'll just say are actually wildly better than most of the captioning systems that even still exist for severe weather coverage. So, all those barriers that deaf individual experienced, the audience should really take to heart, and it's that times 10, that feeling of disconnectedness that those people experience. And I want to ask about another vulnerable population we haven't talked about yet, which is the sort of English as a second language immigrant populations that you featured, which are an important feature of the Southern Plains. We've started to do research with this population to try to understand some of the factors that you were trying to portray. You talk about in the movie, sort of this conversation about not only are they situated in a disadvantageous position with respect to language, but they also have like some sociocultural, sort of situations that play out that leave them perhaps more vulnerable because of the roles they play in society, the access they have or don't have to sheltering. Can you just comment on your thinking with that population and what were you hoping to portray? It seemed like there were a lot of layers there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was really focused on the weather related barriers in particular. So I'll speak to them, but I think that the idea, and it happens to an earlier question on both sides of the border, where our ability to receive warnings based on what language we speak as a first language, it can and does have an impact on how quickly we receive a warning, whether we receive warnings that we are actually equipped to process and understand. So we really were looking at, in particular, Carlos's character in the film to kind of highlight that issue. I can tell you that in Canada, until relatively recently, tornado warnings were sometimes coming out a bit delayed because there was a French translation process. And that's, of course, they need to go out in French as well, but just the very aspect of kind of getting a translated warning message out the door meant it wasn't going out quite as quickly. So there's all kinds of issues that get tied up in these circumstances. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to pretend that I even can speak to them all, but that's why we made the film. It's so that we would have conversations about them all. And so I think that's really what we were trying to do there. And then, their socioeconomic circumstances that you're referring to, again, without giving too much away, what we were really trying to do is just speak to the diversity of our communities, the diversity of circumstance, and kind of touch on the fact that, tornadoes or any extreme weather events aren't necessarily equitable. So we were looking to just represent that idea in that particular arc of the film.
Yeah, and I think you did a fabulous job with that. I think of all the stories, probably the Carlos story may have affected me the most, just because of all the barriers and all the struggles he had, not just with the storm itself, but even getting information. Really hit close to home. The real El Reno tornado is one of them back in May 31st, 2013. Two of the people killed were a family that had recently moved here from Guatemala, and the husband in the family, the father in the family, had misunderstood the weather forecast and thought they had much more time to get home than they did. And they ended up driving into the storm and having to park off to the side of the interstate. And his wife and 17-day-old child were killed. And they didn't speak any English. And it certainly highlighted that challenge. The little things you put in, like I love those cards they were putting on the hotel beds. What did it? Avoid the worst, safety first. I bet Bill was loving that. And I love when the hotel manager said, we ran out of the Spanish versions. You're going to have to translate this. So she was writing the translation on the back of those cards. And then when the tornado was happening, there's a couple standing there in the lobby holding one of those cards. So I don't know. I thought you did a really, really good job highlighting all the different issues that we've talked about, but certainly that one really stood out to me.
I appreciate that you picked that up, actually, because yes, I do love in the film that Anna, she's our communicator, and she takes the time to sit down and provide a translation on the card, not knowing who's in the room, who's going to receive it, whether they are English speaking or not. But then to your point, yes, it's only a Spanish couple that is down there first and foremost, ready to go with their cards. And that was kind of a nod to that idea as well. So that all was very intentional, for sure.
So I'm curious, when people start reading the script and you're actually on set, there's a lot of other people behind the scenes. Did you encounter people that really weren't into weather? They were here just because it was part of their job or whatever. Did you turn them into weather junkies? Are they now addicted to looking at radar apps? Or
I think so. Yeah. I would the cast, for sure, the crew, everyone wants to go out on a storm chase. And I'd take them if I didn't have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. But yeah, everyone kind of, when people take the time to notice the weather and think about the weather, I think people really enjoy it. It's kind of like the sky is something that it's like background in people's everyday. And, so far we've kind of chatted a lot about kind of the gruesome and devastating effects of these weather days, but we did try to capture the beauty of it as well in a lot of ways, and really reflect the emotion of the moments with the skies that we chose in the film. And so, yeah, I think everyone who worked on the film got down there and was, who doesn't fall in love with Oklahoma skies? So yeah, I've got a long list of potential storm chasers from the cast and crew of 13 Minutes.
So Travis, Troy here, and I apologize as well. Unlike James, I've got my own EF4 back here that I'm dealing with, and
is there any truth to the rumor, Troy, that the same company that did the debris field?
Yeah, debris field people they furnished my house, Travis, since the flood event.
Yeah, awesome.
So, but I had to ask you this, and I haven't had a chance to see 13 Minutes yet, but I will. I want to go back to your storm chasing for a second, and I love the fact, as you stated, that you feel like you're pretty safe. So what I want to hear is the one time that you kind of wondered, Travis, about whether you had been that safe. That one time that you maybe a little worried about what you were witnessing.
Yeah, it was Elmer, Oklahoma, in 2015. I think it was 2015 or 2016. But we were in a parking lot watching the tornado approach. It was, a half-mile wide multi-vortex beast, clearly a very strong or violent tornado. It was getting closer and closer and closer, and we were too late getting packed up and into the van. And then we went to get the van out, and there was this pack of storm chase vehicles in front of us. And it was like waiting at a red light to get out of this. And meanwhile, we've got this tornado coming. It looked as though it was going to skirt just south of us. But, I'll tell you, Troy, like my biggest fear as a chaser in a position I never like to be on is in the north side of a strong or violent tornado, especially near, when it's been on the ground for a while, in case it occludes and hooks left and north right into you. And of course, El Reno was very much top of mind that, while this was going on, we ended up blasting north, straight into the forward flank downdraft and softball sized hail that blew out the windshields and smashed the back windows. And I'm telling everyone in the back of the truck, like, we're okay, guys, tornado's going to pass behind us. Like, just lean in and cover your laps and your heads. Like, that's not how I enjoy storm chasing. So that's my one time.
Without being graphic or anything, change of shorts time after that.
Absolutely.
Okay. We started
live.
out with Kat throwing up, so I figure I'll ask Travis about change of shorts. Yes,
we were live streaming at the time, and my mother was watching it. And a hailstone smashed the windshield and popped the camera off, and it fell on the floor and cut the feed. And when we were finally stopped and safe and out of the way, I had to phone her up. I'm so sorry. She's like, Travis, your windshield is gone. I was like, I know, Mom, I won't do that again.
It's coming out of your allowance, son.
But, yeah, exactly.
Now, you present one interesting storyline, and that's that the broadcaster's home is being impacted by the tornado. And James has real live experience in that in this very same year. So, James, talk about that for a minute and talk about how you approached it, Travis, from the filmmaker standpoint.
In my case, I think most people here know the story. This was on March 25th, and we had horrible TDS. These TDS signatures just make you want to literally throw up when you see these things. I mean, it's down, what's happening, and it was going right toward my neighborhood. And so, you have to be a multitasking whiz to do this on the air. People don't understand how many balls you're juggling in the air during long form tornado coverage. But I texted my wife quickly when I was on the air, and I said, "Shelter now." And I had the exclamation points, and she immediately texted back, and she said, "I'm there." And we have a shelter built to an EF5 tornado. So I had that level of comfort knowing that she was not going to be injured. But everybody's human. You still don't know. Do you have a house? Is there a roof? Is there anything? What's she going to see when she walks out of there? So, but my position is just keep going. You're in the middle of a battle. It is a war. And in my case, I'm a general out here in a war, and you just can't abandon ship. So you just keep on keeping on. And I will say it was the distraction of a lifetime. And thankfully, over in the news department, they had her on the phone. They talked her through it and told her when she could come out. And by the grace of God, the roof stayed on the house. It was a lot of damage. I mean, a lot. But we were able to stay in the house during, the repairs and everything. But it was just, one of those things I hope never happens again, because I know without a doubt in my mind, I was not at the top of my game. And that's what I'm here to do. That's what I was born to do. And I felt like the distraction was so overwhelming. I was not quite on it looking back at it. But again, it is what it is. You just have to keep on going on. You don't have any choice.
Well, that's very understandable. So talk about approaching it from the filmmaker standpoint, Travis.
Yeah, James, I'm sorry that you and your family had to go through that. I can't even imagine it. And when that did happen to you and your family, I saw, everyone on the weather community, and I believe you, James, were tweeting, that your home had been hit on that day. And it definitely hit home with me seeing that information come out, because in the film, our newscaster, his home is impacted, his town is impacted, and I'm not going to give away what he does, but I will say it's what we did in the film was we looked at all kinds of circumstances and reactions to extreme weather, and we imagined a scenario where that's happening to our broadcaster, and in the film him and his wife, who's an emergency manager, are in two different places, and neither of them, he doesn't know where she is, she doesn't know where her daughter is, and it's that element of confusion. And to your point, James, everyone knows what to do in this family. We've created a family in the film with a severe weather broadcaster, meteorologist, and a local emergency manager who are married and have this hearing impaired daughter. And everyone in that family knows exactly what the plan needs to be. But that doesn't mean these aren't human beings and there aren't circumstances playing out that could impact whether the plan goes accordingly or not. So I hope, I don't know. I had actually recently forgotten that your family had been through that, James. So it'll be interesting to see your take on how it unfolds in the film.
So, and I'm interested, Bill. I don't know. Can I go for a minute? Or are you done?
Yeah,
Bill's got more. You go.
One more little thing. We try to keep this
go
60 minutes. It is impossible. It cannot be done because there's so many interesting things. Travis, when you get to the end of every movie, it seems like there's always a little boo-boo somewhere. Is there one there that got through that maybe you caught later?
Yeah, there's two.
Okay.
One, I will go with Anna on the balcony running, yelling tornado. There's a lightning flash and it's got a little kind of white streak through it. It's a VFX flash that something just got missed there, but no one will notice that but me. And then the other thing was, to Kim's point earlier, I do, if I could go back and have a do-over, I think I would increase the impact and the outcomes under that overpass just a little.
Well, it's outstanding. I think everybody's got to see it because it does make that happen. Any funny stories from the set? You're dealing with all these stars, and can you have Anna come and be on our show sometime in the future?
We can try for sure. She's incredible. So let me think. There's a couple good. So I'm standing there, and we have one of our disaster sets is this destroyed farmhouse, and it's blown to bits through the fields. And I got to the set the first day after they kind of unveiled the set, and I'm standing there, and Trace Adkin comes up behind me, and he is a big man. His voice is like thunder, and he just stands behind me and goes, "Oh, this film's got a budget." I was like, all right, we're doing something right.
So I'm curious about the distribution, the business end of films. You go back to Twister, you release it, goes into theaters, you make your money. Now with COVID and streaming, it's a different world. So talk about the monetization and the distribution of this whole thing. I'm very interested because, again, my business is changing like a meteor streaking through the night. Linear television is dead. The Ron Burgundy newscast that we're doing, it's near the end of its life cycle. Talk about how you're going to distribute the film and how people can see it, and how do you recoup the money? Because making these films, it ain't cheap.
For sure. So we the kind of model varies depending on the films. This is an independent film, which is one of the things, like, I hope I don't get quoted on this, but critics are kind of making a lot of comparison to Twister. A lot of people want, endless tornadoes, big blue VFX tornadoes. And I don't think we would have done that anyway, but we also didn't have a Twister budget. This is a small indie film. So what you do here is you do this, you put together a script and a package, you attach cast to the package. So once cast starts to come on board, it's kind of like throwing a party. And once someone else who's, going, you're going to go too, and then you're going to go too. And then next thing you know, it's a good time. So in this case, you start to get your cast attachments, and then you find a distributor, and it's their job to take it to market. We pre-sold a bunch of the film to territories all over the world when it was nothing but a script and, Trace, Anne Heche, Paz Vega, Amy Smart, Thor Birch, the rest of the cast, Peter Facinelli. And then away you go. Right now, you are not wrong. Worst time in the world to be in the film business. But that can be said about a lot of businesses right now. It's, and life keeps on going. So
I think something better is going to come out of this. I think a marvelous new model is coming. We're just in this transition phase right now, which is hard. So I would assume this will be released in theaters, and how else can people watch it if they want to wait until it comes on a streaming service?
Totally. So it's out in AMC's in America and Cineplex in Canada, select theaters. So you got to search for it. And then beyond that, James, it will be out on VOD, video on demand, on November 19th. So get to the biggest TV you can, crank up the volume and watch it right.
So let's say I've got a Roku or an Apple TV or a Fire Stick or Chromecast or something. How would you do that? Do you go to some app, or what's the best way to watch it on demand?
Yeah, it's going to be like Apple TV or something first up, where you're going to go and you're going to be able to buy or rent it. Just like any movie, sit in your living room and away you go. So
just like you go to the movies app on Apple TV and it'll be there, and you can rent it or you can buy it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. I'll buy it. I mean, this is a buyer movie here for Weather Weenies here. I mean,
I hope so.
So
now you can stream it on your iPhone, James, with your friends, and y'all can all watch it together.
Yeah, I don't know how that deal works. I need to review that whole situation, but no, it's like I just have not been to a theater, I guess, since COVID. And I would love to see this on a big screen. Right. And we've got an AMC theater in the neighborhood. I mean, maybe it's playing there, but at the same time,
playing in Birmingham, James. Dang it!
Oh, it's not.
No,
we have like AMC theaters everywhere here. But anyway, in my world, I work nights and I have no life like everybody else here. And I have to, watch a film, whenever. And it is easier to do that at the house. So I will anxiously await for that moment when it's up on the Apple TV and can't wait. So anything else people need to know about being able to see it, Travis, in terms of I guess look for your local movie listings.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a film. It's going to be great on your TV set. I believe that too. But if you can get to it in a theater, I would say this is a movie to see. Like the tornado, the storm sequence and tornado impact scenes alone. I can honestly say I do think, I don't remember who said it before, but it's like you're in this thing. So it's definitely a theatrical picture, but sitting on a couch and watching it at home is a good runner-up. So
okay, well, good deal. Well, I don't know if you can stay or not. If you can't stay, great. If you got to go, you take off. But we're going to do picks of the week here in a few minutes, and we always like for our guests to do a pick of the week that's something to do with weather. So if you can, hang on here. But we got to take a quick break for Tony Rice. And by the way, where we are, guess what's happening down here tonight? We've got the SpaceX guys about to re-enter. Yeah, they're about to re-enter here in about 1 hour, and it's going to come right over us, and we might even get the sonic boom. So speaking of that, we've got Tony Rice and his report. We've got Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We'll come back with email, weather roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
We all changed our clocks this past weekend, fell back by an hour and enjoyed a little more sleep. Well, not all of us exactly. If you're in Hawaii, you were never on daylight saving to begin with, never have been. Even during World War II, when the rest of the U.S. moved their clocks ahead an hour, then called wartime, Hawaii time stayed put. Even Arizona moved their clocks ahead at 3 a.m. Monday, February 9th, 1942. Didn't move them back until a minute after midnight, New Year's Day, 1944. Arizona has stayed on mountain time since 1967, though. That is except for the northeastern corner of Arizona, which is part of the Navajo Nation. which does observe daylight saving, like their other lands and other states, except for 2 areas of the Hopi Reservation, which are completely surrounded by their Navajo neighbors and do not observe daylight saving. Confused yet? It only gets worse. Looking at the time zone database, which is maintained by the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, in use on every computer and smartphone, there are more than 25 different rules in place just this year worldwide for when daylight saving stops and starts. Some of the differentiation makes some sense, like those areas in the southern hemisphere where daylight saving starts in October and ends in March. But here in the northern hemisphere, that date varies from between the second Sunday in March and the last Sunday in May. Plus, there are more than 280 time zones that don't observe daylight saving at all, and most of them never have. About those time zones, we all learned in school that there's 24 time zones around the globe, right? But that time zone database I mentioned tracks 439 named time zones, largely to deal with the complexities of daylight saving. Looking back through history, you'll find an even more confusing mess. Since the first national implementation of daylight savings by Germany back in World War I in 1918, there have been nearly 1,000 unique rules globally defined describing when to change your clocks. Every state in the US, except for Indiana and Rhode Island, have at least considered legislation to put that semi-annual ritual behind us. But it's going to require Congress rolling back federal law that prevents those state laws from taking effect. Until then, we'll just have to keep figuring out how to change the clock on our stove. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, on November 9th, 1968, what may have been a family of tornadoes moved through parts of Collier and Hendry counties in Florida. Near Naples, a 705-foot tall tower was toppled. 12 miles northeast of Golden Gate, a hunting camp was hit. And as the tornado moved off to the northeast, it hit a farm labor camp 30 miles southwest of Clewiston. Velma Herrera and her 2-year-old son were killed when their trailer was carried 25 feet and demolished. 2 days later, on November 11th, Collier and Hendry counties were hit once again. A tornado rated F2 with a long skipping path of over 60 miles began off Vanderbilt Beach as a waterspout. It moved into North Naples, destroying 5 homes and damaging 12 others. It skipped northeasterly across Big Cypress Swamp and struck a barn at the Sugarland Ranch of the United States Sugar Company near Clewiston. 3 men sheltered in that barn inside a concrete constructed saddle room and survived. Explore more tornado history on our website at tornadotalk.com.
All right. Time now to dig into the email inbox and see if anything happens to be in there this week.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All righty. So I went back to an email from October from Catherine Ebeling. She has the title Android Weather App Blues. And she had to get a new phone and was looking for some of her favorite weather apps on Google Play and could not find what she was looking for. So she was asking for some advice on good apps for, I guess she was looking at Weather Radio by WDT she had, and then also National Weather Service Now. I don't know much about those apps, but she can't find them. So recommendations, crew, of good weather apps.
Is there, I don't know if there is really a good weather radio. I remember the WDT weather radio, but I don't think I've seen much lately.
No, I don't know of any. I mean, Radar Scope is huge for radar, that's the best in my opinion. Yeah. But in terms of there is no National Weather Service app, is there, Rick?
Get me started.
No, don't get me started.
No, I've had that discussion with the higher ups, Neil, with everyone at all the way up to Louis through the years. But you can make the National Weather Service website quack like a duck, walk like a duck, and act like an app. If you just save it down and save it to your desktop. I mean, and I do that a lot with Rick, putting, on the Weather Service page, putting in a zip code and getting that forecast page up, and you save that one for, in my case, 78759, and it'll carry you always to that. So there are other tricks out there that are available where you can kind of create your own Weather Service app. And I think the Weather Service has one of the best websites in the world as far as being able to get that type of information. But I too wish that NWS had an app and we got past that damn stuff in the 90s. So
yeah, I've got that on my front page of my phone. Is that I've got it set to my zip code, and it's just like an app. So get the forecast and the warnings. If you're in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Mesonet app is amazing, but there's not many of us in Oklahoma. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next email, which could be just as controversial, and that would be talking about subtropical and tropical storms. This is from James Lewis in Michigan. My question is inspired by the recent transition of Wanda. This was back November 6th. From subtropical storm to tropical storm, are some tropical cyclones more tropical than others? That is there a continuous metric for how tropical a storm is, or is it simply a binary classification of tropical and non-tropical? And if so, what is the threshold?
Neil can answer that.
Neil is all over this one.
I don't even know what I just read.
I wouldn't say it's a binary threshold. There's definitely a transition phase, and every storm is unique. And to some degree, it's really up to the a subjective interpretation of a forecaster to make the call.
Yeah, I'm going to make that my pick of the week, that FSU site, the cyclone phase evolution. There's some amazing stuff on there that deals with this exact issue. So that's going to be my pick of the week later. So I don't get the foghorn tonight, Jane.
Yay. So we have Nate Larson giving us a little bit of a tidbit here that Disney Plus is showing Storm Rising from Reed Timmer, if anybody would like to check that out. So that came through today. And then also Joshua Seka wanted to know if we could bring Ginger Z on, but we have. Bill, you said 4 times we've had Ginger on, but when was the last time? We need to have her back on.
I think it's been since 2015. It's been way too long.
We need to get her on and find out what's going on with her life. So that is the last email. Thanks everybody for writing. Go to email@weatherbrains.com and ask us all of your questions, and we will do our best to answer them.
Okay, so quickly, the weather is quiet as a mouse across the country. I mean, it's just, we have no floods, we have no severe thunderstorms, we have no snowstorms going on here, so it's kind of quiet. We have a non-tropical cold core in the Atlantic that probably won't transform, so that's, in a way, we can kind of almost blow past the weather roundup because it is so quiet. There is going to be a midweek system, and that might bring some pretty good snow up north. And it's going to bring some colder air. Troy, will you feel that colder air down in Austin?
Well, we're going to be up to 80, I think, midweek. And that first front is not especially strong, James, but there's a secondary surge, which I think kind of moves down here Thursday night into Friday. And that actually cools us back to the upper 60s and lows in the 40s, which is about 5 degrees below seasonal average for here. So
it'll probably do freezing again by this weekend down here with that second surge. So, but yeah, it's kind of nice and quiet. So let's do picks of the week. Are we trying to make the show short here? Is that one of our goals here, Bill?
Yep.
I don't know why. It's awfully
producer.
It's awfully good long.
No, it's like, and then this show, for those that don't know, this show started off like almost like a broadcast thing. It was 30 minutes. 30 minutes down to the second. David Black hosted the show originally, and he was a broadcaster and really good. And then a bunch of us dweebs got in here, and it just went on. We're unhinged. We've had almost 3-hour shows here. So we're trying to shorten them, which will probably never happen. But let's do picks of the week. Let's go around the digital mahogany table here and talk about something interesting that is related to weather. And let's start with Rick Smith, our man from Norman, Oklahoma, who's got a pick of the week for us. Rick, go. I
do have a pick of the week, and kind of related to my reaction to parts of the movie there. My pick of the week has to do with storm anxiety and stress. I know a lot of us started our lives with storm anxiety. Some still have it. It's a huge problem all over the country with any kind of weather. People in Alabama have it, and people here have it, and it could be from hurricanes or whatever. But we put together a website to kind of help people deal with the storm anxiety and stress. We did an informal survey on Facebook and said, what exactly is it about severe weather that freaks you out or makes you nervous or stressed? And kind of got some of the most common answers. So the webpage that's my pick of the week is kind of tries to address those. Some people say, like, I'm afraid that I'm going to be buried in my storm shelter and not able to get out. Well, we have advice for how to deal with that. And anyway, I think I think it's good, and it's not an Oklahoma thing. It's not just a tornado thing necessarily, but I think it's important to kind of address that. And, it's happening to people. So whatever we can do to help them get through it, I think is important.
Awesome. And all these links will be on the website, weatherbrains.com. Jen, what is your pick of the week?
19 years ago, it's hard to believe it was this long ago that we had the Veterans Day outbreak, and that started the 9th and lasted through the 11th. And so I'm fascinated with the Van Wert tornado from November 10th, 2002. And so my pick of the week is the trooper video. There's a trooper from that area that watched it and calmly broadcast it out on the airwaves while watching it and filming it. And it's one of the most amazing videos to me, just to listen to his voice and how calm he was to say, just play by play, this is what's happening as he's watching it. It's huge and moving across. So it's the video from that Van Wert tornado.
Looking forward to seeing that. All right, Neil, what's your pick of the week?
So I went down the dangerous rabbit hole of researching woolly bear caterpillars and their forecast skill. And of course, I went to the internet because that's where all the viable source of truth is. Yes. And I came across a couple of interesting studies. The one obviously posted by the National Weather Service that claims they have no skill whatsoever. Another one by UC Davis that says they have actually successfully predicted the presidential election outcome for the last 3 decades.
Wow.
And then my actual pick of the week is going to be a scientific paper, because I went to Google Scholar and started searching for woolly bear caterpillar forecast verification skill, and found a paper titled Techniques and Skills of Indigenous Weather and Seasonal Climate Forecast in Northern Ghana, where the authors actually quantitatively scored the farmers versus the Met Service, and they tied each other in forecast skill.
Wow. So you don't get this on these other weather podcasts.
No.
Only on this show do you get this
They were
stuff. This is
secretly
great.
running the GFS on their Commodore 64 back in the barn, though, I think.
Vic 20. That's awesome. All right, Troy, go. You're up.
I love webcams, and today this is just one to relax by. Saipan in the northern Mariana Islands, about 15 degrees north latitude. It's about 1.5 degrees north of Guam. A beautiful high-resolution webcam courtesy of EarthCam, and looking over the tropical Pacific out there. I'm sitting watching a moderate cumulus out over the water right now at coming up on noon on Tuesday out in Saipan right now. But just a beautiful picture, and nothing really weather related about it except it's a picture of the sky, and I love it.
It's like a Valium sandwich.
Yep.
I watched that thing. That's like awesome. All right, Kim, what you got for us? What's your pick of the week?
So I don't have nearly as amazing of a lead in as Neil did for his sort of academic paper pick, but my pick of the week is a pick about the economic impacts of severe and rare extreme weather like tornadoes and hurricanes, but it's done by a sort of unusual group. The San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank did a really interesting analysis, and to me, it showcases that there's a lot of variety and interpretations to what an economic impact analysis can look like. We tend to think of it one way in the weather forecasting world because we're really, really focused on the forecast and trying to quantify the benefit of it. And this was a really interesting way to think about the dynamics of what happens in a local economy. So I encourage people to check that out if you're interested.
That is a very interesting topic, and we will do that. And again, my pick, it's a scientific paper about how the tropopause has been getting higher over the past 40 years, which to me is very interesting. And again, that pick will be on weatherbrains.com. So before we go to Bill Murray, Travis, we've stalled long enough. We tried to give you some time to come up with something good. So go, give us a pick of the week.
You got it. I had it when you were doing your weekly roundup, because 2 days ago, Vancouver, British Columbia was hit by an EF0 tornado. Wow. It was a that cone supercell tornado that came in off of the bay and caused, thankfully, minor damage in the city. But yeah, then when we move on to pick of the week, it's got me thinking it's got to be Northern Tornadoes Project here in Canada. You know, I'm Canadian, chatting with you folks down in the States, and Northern Tornadoes Project, group of researchers up here, making it their mission to document all tornadoes across Canada. So you can go on and look at basically every tornado that's been observed and recorded, photographed with aerial high resolution imagery and satellite analysis, and gives all you weather geeks out there a chance to check out Canadian content for a bit of a change.
Awesome. Great. And we'll put the link up on the website, weatherbrains.com. All right, Bill Murray, wrap it up. What you got for us? Go.
Yeah. James, I think, we missed in the weather roundup because we just don't have good West Coast representation. Big storm coming into Northern California and Oregon over the next day or so. How about 25-foot waves with an 8-second period in Southern Oregon and Northern California? That would have to be a blast. Dr. Neil, a tip to you. Tristan Gooley is going to join us from England. His book, The Secret World of Weather, doesn't address the woolly bear caterpillars, but it does address a lot of other cool stuff. And next week, we have a real life theologian and another filmmaker. Tornado God is the book. Dr. Peter Thusen is going to answer a lot of questions about severe weather and religion. And this is a subject that filmmaker Josh Bullock undertook, James, here in Birmingham, and you were part of what he did. So we'll be in amazement from another filmmaker next week. Going to be a show that's really to look forward to, and can't wait for Christmas Eve. Joe L. Carter will read us a special Christmas story that night, and I promise you, it's going to be something that you're going to look forward to and going to become a WeatherBrains tradition.
Awesome. So, Travis, before we go, one more time for people that are just joining us watching live, tell us how they can watch your film.
Yeah, for sure. So to see 13 minutes, you're going to go on and search your local AMCs, see if it's playing at a theater near you. If it is, great, buy a ticket and go see it. If not, November 19th, it will be out on video on demand. So you'll be able to get on your couch, turn on your TV set, and rent or buy it. And I hope everyone does.
And I think everybody that listens to this show will do that. So thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Travis. Great having you. And thanks to all of you for listening and watching. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. The show notes, all the websites we've talked about, that'll be on the website as well, weatherbrains.com. We're typically here Monday nights at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. We'll see you next week. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening and watching. Have a great week. And God bless. Thanks, Travis. Great to have you on the show tonight.
2 hours of your life, Travis.